Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin, NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. So, again, continuing the NHL expansion series where we have a look at failed franchises and if they could succeed in another attempt, as well as potential future franchises and markets and whether or not those could succeed. And so, today we are continuing the future franchises portion. So, markets that don't currently have a team or would have a second team. So, we've already done Houston, which was, we knew for sure that we were going to have a look at that. Then we took a brief break of a couple streams. So, yesterday, well, the day before yesterday, we had a look at potential franchises or, well, potential new markets more broadly to figure out which ones kind of make the cut of being worthy of consideration versus not make the cut. And then yesterday, we had a look at the ones that, or we kind of went over the ones that don't make the cut and kind of justified why they don't make the cut. And so now we know which ones did make the cut, at least to have a look at whether or not they are worthy of of a new franchise or a second franchise in the market. That's what we're having a look at. And so we're starting with Mississauga, which would be a second team in the GTA or Greater Toronto Area. So we're going to have a look and consider this as a potential expansion market. So just a moment as normal to pull things up. All right, so this is going to be slightly more difficult. So once we're getting into multiple teams in the same market, it makes it difficult to separate out, in particular when it comes to hockey registrations, which ones are part of a certain region versus another region. I think altogether, because I guess the easiest way to do it is to consider all the registrations and just divide it by 2 when it comes to a second team, or dividing it by 3 when it comes to a third team. Or we could do kind of a ratio. I think that probably makes more sense if we do a ratio based on the population of that region versus, or of that specific area versus the region. So, for example, if we're looking at Mississauga, the population of maybe Mississauga as a percentage of the GTA or something like that. Again, this is where it's a bit difficult to separate out the different regions for comparison, but we can also take a look at it broadly and just, like I said, divide it by 3, so it's kind of tough to say. So I did have a couple moments to have a look just before the stream at where the Ontario Hockey Federation, which would be the southern part of Ontario, which cities and regions it encompasses. And the problem is that it starts to stretch into areas where they're not going to be going to games in the Greater Toronto Area. So, for example, Sudbury is quite far, and or like Thunder Bay. I forget if Thunder Bay is part of the northwestern Ontario region. I don't think it is, but I don't know for sure. Anyways, I'd have to look, but uh, altogether, essentially, the region gets too far away from the GTA to be correct for that region specifically. So we might not be able to take a look at hockey registration. The other thing is in essence, it should be approximately the same. So if you're in Ontario, the province, the fan base should essentially be the same. Like the strength of the fan base should essentially be the same, pretty much across the board. That's what I would argue. So, I think, in effect, we can just divide the registration by 3 to approximate the amount. Now, it's difficult to say. So, or what should I actually? Probably the best way to do it is to take the total population and divide it by the total hockey registrations, because then you're essentially getting, because like I said, every region should approximately be the same for interest in hockey, and then so if you just divide the totals by the totals, it should be perfectly accurate, I would guess. So I think actually that makes the most sense. Give me a sec here to figure this out then. So it's going to be this plus this plus this. And so as you can tell, I mean, as per normal, if you've seen other streams, everything's done on the spot. So I kind of have to, well, you get to see me problem solve, and then you also get to see exactly how I compile the data. So it does take a bit more time, and you're seeing, some of the work, which might not be as exciting, but at least you're seeing where the work's coming from, how I justify the decisions and things like that. So I don't think it's bad, as I've said before. Okay, so we'll put it here. So the population of Ontario is this. Wait, so we're doing the other number actually. So this divided by this. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, well, for example, we're considering the entirety of Winnipeg as the registration, or sorry, the entirety of Manitoba, the province, as the registration for Winnipeg. So that's why it looks more, but in effect it's less, because you want to know the actual area around around Winnipeg. Now, I guess in effect it's the same thing, really. because yeah, it's as a percentage of the population. So the region, if they're all the same, like I just said, yeah. So then I guess in effect, so maybe hockey's slightly more popular in Manitoba as a percentage of the population. So I don't know. But anyways, I was gonna correct how it's different, but it could be correct, and really, in essence, it's not of critical importance, anyways. Okay, so we've got that. We want. Do we want to do? It's not even really worth doing the registration. We can kind of leave that blank. And in essence, it's going to be the same thing for Montreal once we get to it in Vancouver, because I think it's like I said, so it should be the same for pretty much all regions. Now, to get the raw number, it might be interesting, relevant, but really it's not something exactly we were looking at, so it's not all that important, I would say. Population, again, do we really need it? Yeah, because, well, what's the distance from Hamilton to... I know we're not doing Hamilton, but I just want to see for interest's sake, to Toronto. $80 kilometers. I mean, it's separate kind of enough, but I mean, that's a commutable distance. So it really is the same region. Now, another consideration. What's the Golden Horseshoe? So thankfully, as you can tell, I know the region well. I lived there for a chunk of my life, so quite familiar with the market. Oh, I shouldn't have closed that. So, how far north? Region of York. Does the Golden Horseshoe? Yeah, it does. So, yeah, and I was using 6 million that I was considering before. So you know what? I think Golden Horseshoe's probably closest to what we're considering. What are the other regions? So Eastern Ontario is not included. Southwestern. What's the distance from... let's go Sarnia to Toronto. It's a bit too far. What does it include? So, see, London to Toronto, 200 kilometers. Eastern Ontario, Southwestern. Golden Horseshoe. Oh, it does loop around to Niagara Falls, essentially. Central Ontario. What's the furthest point in Central Ontario? Belleville. You know what? I think Golden Horseshoe is going to approximate the region anyways. I mean, I think that's as close as it's going to get. And then if we include the extended area, yeah, that's about right, because that includes, for example, a place where I've lived before, Barrie, and that's about an hour from Toronto. And that's definitely commutable for a game. So I think that should be close enough. Now, I don't think in the end it's going to be of critical importance, but we'll still record that. It's the same for Hamilton. Attendance. Attendance. Let's see. Because I think they've been at capacity every year for like all of its recent history. Yeah. So So it's because it's really hard to estimate, what the attendance is going to be like, because you divide a region into 2 or 3, how many people are going to show up to each? It's really tough to say. So the total region's 9.7. Just trying to see if there's some way to approximate. I don't think there is. I just got an idea. So maybe what we could do is consider New York as a proxy and then divide it in a similar fashion. So So Toronto's 1.8. New York is 2. Actually, this is another way I could have done it yesterday. So if we have New York. Here, let's try this. I'm going to try something. So we've got 2 billion plus 950 plus 775. So 3.725 billion value in the region for New York. New Jersey. I mean, really, in the end, what you could do, and I think it would actually make tons of sense, is just kind of copy the same valuations. Now, whether or not it would be true, it's hard to say. But it makes sense that it would be close. So, for example, if we took, let's say we took Mississauga as a similar value to the Islanders, because so we know that Toronto's the same as New York, essentially. Then we could say Mississauga, because it's the next closest, would be the same as the Islanders. And then New Jersey, Hamilton would be about the same as New Jersey. I think that makes sense. Whether or not it's true, I mean, it's super hard to say. I don't know, but it seems to be about right. So, So in effect, I'm actually doing Mississauga and Hamilton at the same time, which I guess is okay. Um, hmm. I think it makes sense. Okay, so if Toronto we'll say Toronto is 1800 divided by 2, so 1.8 to 2 billion. So we have a factor of 0.9, and if we multiply, so if we say that Mississauga, because it's closest to Toronto, and the Islanders are closest to New York, the Rangers, then we take the valuation of the Rangers, multiply it by 0.9 to get the approximate valuation of a Mississauga team. I mean, again, this isn't a perfect science, of course. I'm just estimating with the best information that I have. But it seems like it would make sense. Mississauga is very close. It's close to the airport. You probably get more fans in than Hamilton. Hamilton does have an airport, but it's not as well situated. Airport's not as good. Toronto's going to remain the same, essentially, you would argue. So I think that makes sense. I mean, again, we're just doing estimates, and it's hard to say if it would be true. We're going to try it out, and we'll see what happens. Wait, we want that. Now, the other thing we can do is, rather than divide it by 3, we can do the same ratio as the valuations in New York. So I'll show you what I mean. So we've got, that's the base number. We take right now we're on Hamilton, so we take 775 divided by 775 950 plus, it was 2. So what we did is we took, so for Hamilton, we did the valuation of the Devils divided by the Rangers plus the Islanders plus the Devils. And then that's the approximate, we're going to use that ratio as the approximate population base for the team. And out of interest, what is that amount? So 20%. Huh. Seems like it's probably about right, I guess. makes total sense to me to approximate the population. Again, I don't think in the end we're going to really use that, but I think it makes sense if in fact we do use it, but we might as well do the calculations. Cool. Registration, we won't use, like I said, we just take the full provincial registration divided by the full province's population, and it should be essentially the same or the rate of registration should be the same across the whole province, I would estimate. Now, should we just take the range of attendance for again, line them up the same sort of things? So Mississauga's attendance is going to be the same as the Islanders, and then Hamilton's attendance is going to be the same as the Devils. I mean, I don't see why not, why we can't use those as approximates. So we might as well. All right, let's try that. Prudential Center. I think that's still where the Devils play. Their attendance from 2015. I mean, it's been pretty consistent, so I guess we can use the 2015 numbers. So capacity 16,514. And that was for New Jersey, which we're going to say is Hamilton. And then the low is, we can't use the COVID years, so that is 14,567. 14,567. Max is, oops, 15,210. 15,210. Okay. So that is 2017-18. Then the minimum was in 16, 17. Oops. Okay. Now, I think Hamilton does have an arena, right? So its capacity is 17,383. It's pretty close to what we're saying for New Jersey. Should we use that? Or use the New Jersey number? You know what? What we'll do is we'll do a worst case scenario and use the Hamilton one. Plus, it's more accurate technically, so we'll just pretend that we're using that arena. And since we're on this, we will do the same data for the Islanders. So New York. Now the difficulty here is that they changed arenas, so it's kind of not going to be perfectly accurate, but again, we're doing approximations, so good enough's good enough. Now, is it going to tell us? '18, 19, 19, 20. Split their games. Man, it's a bit of a wreck to compare to. So maybe go back to before 2014, 15? 2014, 15. See, because this one makes this region look worse, and I think Mississauga would be stronger than Hamilton, to be honest. What is their capacity? Oh, 13,000. Maybe that's why the numbers are so low. Man, this is tough. It's a complete mess when it comes to, because like they played in 2 different arenas for 2 seasons. Then they were at 1 for another. Then they're at a new one. Jeez. Maybe what we do. I thought it was Scotiabank for Toronto. Oh, Scotiabank Arena, same thing. So capacity's 19,000. So maybe what we do is we take the same capacity as Hamilton. So what was the minimum? 14,000. What's the minimum for Islanders? See, because I don't think this is representative. How can I do that? Maybe what I could do is that actually makes more sense. So I think what I can do then is we'll take the attendance of a similar population for a Canadian market. So we won't use this. So we'll use Vancouver's market for, so Vancouver's attendance for Mississauga, and then Calgary's attendance for Hamilton. It's probably close. Actually, I think that could be about right. I think that makes the most sense. So that's what we'll do instead. Yeah. So we want Calgary Flames attendance. Saddle Dome. So their capacity is 19,000, but I mean that wouldn't be realistic for a new market in the GTA. They're able to fill it though. Man, maybe. Well, you know what? Let's just use worst case scenario, because then that way we know for sure approximately how much would work. So we want this. Calgary Flames at their worst were 15,320. And that was in 99, 2000. And then otherwise, I mean, man, they've been pretty consistent too. So if we just say that the best year is at capacity, seems about right. Where is that? So 96, 97, let's just wait. So we're using the best versus, I guess, the most recent full season, which would have been 18-19. I guess close enough. All right, and then we're gonna do Vancouver. So capacity is 18, 9, 10, and we're going to use the same one for the current arena in Hamilton. So then we won't use this. Man. So it's basically they're going to be at capacity, but let's go to their lower years. So 14,641. Or do we just say that it's And it feels like because they can do 18,000 in Vancouver, and it's going to be a similar size. Maybe we can do it this way. Give me a sec here. Maybe I can do that too. So that's 2.6. This is 2.49. Man. It doesn't. It feels like it should be. Capacity, man. 'Let's let's do this. So 14,641. That's 99. 2,000, which I believe was the same. Yeah. And then 17796. 7796. And then what we'll do is that times the Mississauga population divided by the Vancouver population. I mean, we're really doing rough estimates here, so I gotta do something. And seven, 9, 6, 95, 96. Okay, so I mean, it's like I said, this is not a perfect science, and I have no idea as to the accuracy of these estimates, but they kind of make sense, and I'll explain why as we go through. I just want to make sure that all the calculations are correct for the reference cells. Okay, so yeah, so like I said, in the end, we're doing both Mississauga and Hamilton at the same time. So what I started with is we took the total population of the Golden Horseshoe, so that's essentially a bit north of Toronto, a bit east of Toronto, all the way around the body of water to Niagara Falls. So it's, to be honest, it would probably go further west from Hamilton, maybe slightly further north from Toronto, maybe slightly further east. So anyways, it's an approximate population. Whether or not it's accurate, it's hard to say, but that's kind of how I figured out those. In the end, we don't really use that number later on, so it's just an approximation of the population base for attendance. So if you want to use it in contrast, I mean, it's, so Mississauga you could estimate is approximately double the size of Winnipeg's market. Hamilton's maybe approximately the same, about double Winnipeg's market. And if Winnipeg can survive and it's double the size, you could, I would say, argue that the population base should be sufficient to support the team. We're not looking at hockey registration because there's no way to really break it up. What we did instead is just took the total provincial population and divided the hockey registration into the total population of the province to get the approximate registration versus population, and we get 1.43%, which is 50% better than Minnesota. 3 times Columbus. Anyways, it's quite good. It's essentially as good as it gets. It's less than Winnipeg, but we use the full province, and again, I don't know if for sure if that would be accurate, but I mean, it should be pretty close. I guess because you have a higher population base in Ontario, you divide the registration out. It kind of makes sense that it would be lower, but in any case, it's still quite high. It's, like I said, 50% better than Minnesota, and I believe Minnesota is the best state for hockey registration in the States. So it's quite strong, the region for hockey registration, which is a proxy for fan base. We got population is double the lowest, or double the smallest market that you would want to have in Canada. So, I mean, well, another way we can look at this is Ottawa. If Ottawa can support a team, and you could argue maybe that Ottawa is not the strongest market, and it's still, well, 600,000 in the worst case scenario, up to 1 million more population base to use to get fans into the arena. I mean, if both Ottawa and Winnipeg can survive, why wouldn't, in effect, two additional teams in the GTA, why wouldn't they work? Again, we're kind of splitting out the sponsorships and purchases of or rentals of luxury boxes and pre-purchased tickets for fans. I mean, things like that. So it's hard to say, but I mean, Toronto, of all places, you would think has enough industry to support, based on the population base, to support, it looks like, 3 teams. So anyways, that's what I would argue. Don't know if necessarily that it would be true, but that's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. Then from there, we took the minimum attendance from, we used Vancouver for Mississauga, and then the average attendance in that year, which I believe was in 99, 2000, which is old. So I was really, really looking at a kind of a worst case scenario. The average in the season was 16,376. Minimum year, same thing for Hamilton. Same season, same average. The max year, we took, what did we use there? B20. So what we did is we took the capacity of the rink, multiplied it by the population base, divided by the population base of, in this case it was Vancouver, to get a sort of approximate factor to decrease from capacity, and so we got 16,770. For Hamilton, we used the capacity, because it's far enough away from Toronto that you think it would be a separate fan base, because then you're starting to use London, Ontario as a fan base, around the Horseshoe, maybe Niagara Falls, St. Catharines and things like that. So I would argue that in order, you'd have Toronto would always be strong. Then you'd have probably Hamilton would be the next strongest team because of the way the population bases kind of touch it. And then Mississauga is probably going to be the weakest of them because it's connected to Toronto. And although the population base is larger, they're all going to go to Toronto, or a chunk of them will. And so it's going to, of all three, it would make sense that maybe Mississauga would be the lowest. So anyways, that's why the numbers kind of work out in that fashion. Then the valuations we took. So Toronto Maple Leafs divided by the valuation of the Rangers. Use that multiple, and then I guess what we would do is switch these. So since we used the Islanders, which were the second best valuation in New York. We're going to use that valuation approximately times 0.9 to get Hamilton's valuation, and then Mississauga, we take the Devils times 0.9 to get the Mississauga valuation. Again, we're just kind of approximating. So, and it kind of lines up. It seems like it makes sense. So if Mississauga would be approximately the same value as the Minnesota Wild, which kind of makes sense because the market size is, so the registration, what did we, registration as a percentage of the population. Oh, so what we can do is reverse engineer this actually, and that's what we'll do. So we'll take the 203. Okay, so yeah, that's what we'll do is we'll reverse engineer. So we take the population times the registration as a percentage of the population to get the approximate registration for the region. And then that way we can actually use that to compare to other bases. So even on the low end, the registration is approximately the same as the entire province of Manitoba, which we used for Winnipeg's registration base. So really, I mean, the fan base has got to be enough to support, well, in this case, Hamilton, but to support 2 additional teams. It completely lines up. It has to be the case. So on the low end, it's better than Winnipeg. And let's try something else here. So we'll take that same factor and multiply it by Ottawa. What was the percentage? 1.43 times 0.0143. So yeah, I mean, it's better than, in the worst case scenario, better than Ottawa. I mean, I guess I didn't really even need to do that math, but it totally makes sense that there's got to be enough of a fan base to get people to fill the rink. And you're not asking for much, so we're making this capacity 17,383, which is the, what is it, Cops Coliseum? What's it called in First Ontario Centre? Yeah, it used to be called Cops Coliseum. And so, I mean, if you have a smaller rink, you should be able to fill those, because you can fill to capacity in Toronto, and Toronto's capacity is what, 19,000? What is it for hockey? Yeah, about 19,000. I mean, you gotta be able to fill these rinks if it's 1,000 less. You gotta be able to, based on that population and fan base. So anyways, so if we take a look at just some approximate worst case scenarios here. So minimum attendance, maybe ballpark 84% of capacity. And that's better than the Winnipeg Jets at the worst case scenario. So the minimum attendance, 14,600. It's better than Colorado. I mean, you don't have the value of the exchange rate. But man, you're still filling the rink pretty much, even in a worst case scenario, it seems like, or at least sufficiently filling the rink. So probably somewhere between 84 and 88% is what you'd have as regular minimum attendance. See, let's just see. I want to see something for, because we did Calgary. We know Edmonton fills the rink like they're at capacity. Calgary wasn't the best, but I mean, it wasn't bad. And then Vancouver wasn't bad. I mean, it's been at capacity as of late. So I just want to contrast with Ottawa Senators. Oh, wait, no, I don't want that. I want Ottawa Senators. So COVID years don't really count. Worst was 14,500, which is approximately what we have as the worst for Mississauga. I mean, it's gotta work. It absolutely has to work. So if Ottawa can go that low and still survive, and I mean, they're about to be purchased at a high value, it seems like. Man, it's got to be fine. So even looking at worst case scenarios, even if it goes to as bad as Winnipeg, I mean, it's more or less double the population to feed the attendance. And so it's got to be at the minimum still better. So I think as far as I can tell, or as far as I would argue, I mean, if we take, again, using Calgary, Vancouver as some examples for attendance, even on their lower ends, so not where they're consistently at capacity, they're still nearly 100% capacity. And then versus the league, they're at or above league average. So, I mean, really, it's like I said, I mean, I really can't see how one franchise wouldn't work, or one additional franchise in the GTA wouldn't work. And when you really take those numbers and kind of divide it by 3, essentially, why it wouldn't work for even a third franchise. It just doesn't make sense why it wouldn't work. Let's check one other thing just before I finish my thoughts there. Where is it here? Actually, I'll pull this back up just so you can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so when we took that, the percentage of the population and reverse engineered to figure out the approximate registration of the region, so I wanted to contrast that with some other areas, because this kind of approximates fan base. And so Chicago, Illinois, and so the Chicago Blackhawks, 26,297 is the hockey registration. worst case scenario, it's probably better in Hamilton. So the fan base seems to be as strong as Chicago, you could argue. Where's some other examples here? So 29,000. What's another one close? It's about the same as all of California. Michigan, you could say like worst case scenario, the attendance is going to be as bad as Chicago's worst case scenario, and where was it here? Chicago and Michigan, maybe. So let's take a look at those, just out of interest. So their worst attendance, I mean, it's been a while since they've gotten so low, but maybe even at their worst case scenario, it's like 13,000. And that's more than the Winnipeg Jets, and they can probably survive. But really, like, if you look at Chicago, straight across the board, they're filling to capacity as of late. So, I mean, looks pretty strong. The other one we were thinking about was, where was it here? Illinois. So we did Chicago, sorry. Michigan. So Red Wings attendance at their worst. They're at capacity all the time. I mean, their registration's higher, so maybe that's a bit misleading. Let's take a look at a worse off one. So we have Wisconsin, we can't do, there's no team. Let's say New Jersey. So on the low end for New Jersey, it's still, it's about the same as the worst case we put here for attendance. So if New Jersey's so strong, then why wouldn't these be strong? Let's see if there's any other good examples. Texas, maybe. We already know that Dallas, their attendance is perfectly good. So, I mean, it just does not make sense. It does not make any sense why, again, like I said, at least one franchise, or I guess the better phrasing is, it's obvious that another franchise, at least one in the GTA, would definitely work. And it looks like two already could work. What you would want to do maybe is start with one, see how it goes, and then maybe expand into a second. Maybe it's a short-term, long-term kind of thing. So you do maybe one in Hamilton, and then you do a few years down the line, one in Mississauga. That probably makes the most sense, because it seems like I said, maybe Mississauga would be a worse off market, geographically speaking, because Hamilton gets to feed into Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, London, and it's kind of separate from Toronto. And then Toronto probably wouldn't lose any fans, so it just kind of makes sense to do that. Whereas if you have Mississauga right beside Toronto, it should be a strong market, but you're not really utilizing the southern part, or the southernmost part of the region and its populations. So it just makes more sense for Hamilton, geographically speaking, for it to be the first expansion franchise in the GTA. But like I said, I think both would work. So I just don't know why you wouldn't consider it. Now, I mean, again, so like I said, maybe short term, long term is kind of the best way to approach it just to make sure. But already it seems within the realm of possibility that of possibilities that two additional teams in Toronto or the GTA would work. And I mean, based on all of the different ways that we looked at it from the perspective of comparing it to other Canadian markets, comparing to worst case scenario markets in the States, comparing it to worst case scenarios in Canada, using the Jets, Ottawa as examples. I mean, it just doesn't make sense why they wouldn't work. And like I said, at the very least, one extra team in the GTA. So that's my opinion, and we'll leave it there. So if you like the stream, hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, turn on notifications. Otherwise, channel homepage has upcoming streams. Should be 3 p.m. Eastern daily, except for Sundays. Any comments, leave them in the comments. Suggestions, same thing. And I guess so tomorrow we're not going to be doing Hamilton since we did both today. And so instead what we'll move on to is the next one on the list, which if you can give me just one sec to figure out. I think it's Montreal is what I had scheduled next. Yeah, so we'll consider Montreal for tomorrow, a second team in Montreal. Cool. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys then.